Hello and welcome to the Astrology and Spirituality Show for week commencing the 7th of March. Thank you so much for joining, Alyssa and I. We hope you're well. Now, of course, the last 10 days has seen some devastating developments in the centre of Europe, not least the push of people out into other countries as they try to escape the conflict. And I'm sure your hearts will go out to them like ours. But there is a big change that's occurred right at the end of last week, which does provide a bit of a ray of hope in terms of the astrology, because, of course, on the 3rd of March, we had that alliance between Venus, Mars and Pluto in a conjunction. Now, in the sign of Capricorn, it's very much about power, old power, but also Venus has been in the mix. And Venus, in its combination with Mars and Pluto, has been used in a surprising way, because Venus is about relationships, but it's also about money through its rulership of Taurus. So I think the combination of Venus, Mars and Pluto has seen the sanctions that have been imposed much more robust than anyone might have expected. So leverage applied. So very Venus, Mars, Pluto. But right at the end of last week, on Sunday, Venus and Mars moved into the sign of Aquarius. Well, Mars will be for 6 weeks and Venus for 28 days. Now, the sign of Aquarius does have some of the energy of Capricorn because it shares the rulership of Saturn, but of course it also has that duality through its modern higher octave ruler of Uranus. It's very much more progressive. So the conjunction between these two, that's been going on for some while, hopefully is going to bring a much more humanitarian vibration to bear. And of course there has been lots of fundraising for people on the ground in the Ukraine, which has been inspiring. So you could say that the sign of Aquarius governs us all. It's about humanity. So the power of Mars still being applied, potentially in a negative way. But I'm hoping that these two together will start to bring some greater dimension to discussion, negotiation. We're not seeing it at the present time at all, but I'm hoping it will evolve. Of course, what's going to happen is that Mars is going to go on to align with Saturn, and then it's going to square with Uranus. And those two aspects can be very tricky. So it's not a panacea, but I'm hoping that there will be a more collective consciousness emerging of the tragedy of this situation. It really is so bad. And then later this week we have Mercury in Aquarius moving into the sign of Pisces on Thursday. Now, Mercury doesn't like technically being in the sign of Pisces, but Pisces can be about compassion. And in the first half of this week, the Sun is in a conjunction with Jupiter, the traditional ruler of Pisces, and that's said to be a very lucky influence. Now, just pushing back on the fact that Jupiter doesn't always bring benefits. It can bring exaggeration. It can bring a heightened environment, which is not always helpful. But then on Thursday, when Mercury moves, it forges a quarter moon with the moon in Gemini, but then the Sun is merging with Neptune, the other co-regent of Pisces. So the potential for distortion around information is incredible with that particular quarter moon. And in our own situations, I think we need to be as mindful as we can to avoid hearsay, steer clear of known gossips, don't give anyone any information that we don't have to share, and guard your personal information carefully, particularly online, because we're not just going to have this war in the centre of Europe being fought on the field and in cities. It's definitely being fought through technology, and all of our information can be very valuable to people with malicious intent. You know, whether it's people who want to steal our money or through phishing, or it is state-sponsored issues. So just be conscious of that this week. But I'm hoping that the Venus-Mars conjunction, which starts the week off and is going to be ongoing for some while, will bring some kind of ray of light within this horrible darkness. Now, what about the Hermetic Wheel?
Well, the Hermetic Wheel gives us a lot of hope as well, and I'm really grateful for that. We start off with most of this week in the Nine of Cups. We had that a little bit last week. The Nine of Cups is the wish card, so it's about putting our intentions out there, putting positive words, positive thoughts. I know that can sound a little bit airy-fairy, but I think if enough of us do that, then surely it has some energetic impact. And then on Friday, we move into the glorious Ten of Cups. The Ten of Cups is a fruition of those hopes and wishes maybe coming to pass. It's about communication. It's about understanding. It's about negotiations. It's about family. And things come in, full circle. So we come into the end of the cups cards, because 10 represents completion. So hopefully some loose ends will be tied up this coming Friday for us.
If you've got two very rigid energies that collide, however righteous they both feel that they are, if you get that collision of those energies and neither side is prepared to budge, what you get is a collision, and the energy of that collision is very direct. It's almost like if we kind of deflect, if we feel someone's negative energy and we decide not to empower it, not to give oxygen to the flame, if you like, and we turn our shoulder and just turn our heads almost, we can deflect that direct collision. But whatever our viewpoints, we've got to hope that some kind of give can be made, because this, defiance on either side is just causing more and more slaughter, sadly. So, in terms of the word of the week, well, we didn't have one contributed this week. So, I'm actually going to just dream one up, because I've just realised we've forgotten to bring the cookie jar next to the settee.
Very sorry.
What about impulsiveness?
Oh, that's a good word. I like the way that just flew out. Impulsiveness. Yeah, I think with impulsiveness, I think a lot of us, I don't think everyone suffers from this, because some people are very, very cautious, and therefore a bit of impulsiveness could probably go a long way for them to give them that spontaneity to do something new.
Or they might find it really fearful.
Yes. But then others of us have got that kind of impulsive streak, and it's about how we use that and where we focus that energy. If we're putting that energy into something that is going to hurt us emotionally, mentally, financially even, then that's not a positive thing. But if we use that impulsiveness to maybe change our lives for the better, that could really drive forwards something that's been stagnating. What about you?
Well, why did that word even
Yes.
come up?
Why did it, Patrick?
I think we've been talking just as we were getting ready that we tend to flow quite quickly on things, so we can have particular targets in all sorts of ways, whether it's what we're having for dinner, or whether we're going to speed down the beach or whatever, and we just change our minds constantly through each of the days. But we don't seem to sweat it when we do it. We just seem to flow along with that. But I was saying to Alyssa earlier that I could imagine some people would find the fact that I can be changeable like that really, really frustrating.
Yeah, I think we both have ADHD, which in some ways is actually really brilliant for work, for creativity, for coming up with ideas, but on the home front and the organisation front, it can be more of a challenge. So we all, for any of us that do have, anything that may be considered a disability. I have dyslexia, for example, which is a massive hindrance for me in a lot of ways, but is actually really positive in other ways. So it's about looking at what our gifts and talents are and where we focus them.
It was quite funny. We were driving along the other day, and Elisa was saying, "Look at those buildings on the right. Those are those ones that were flooded and been put on sale." And I'm driving along, and there's nothing but a field on the right of the road.
Yes, I get my left and rights mixed up sometimes, which is a constant hilarity. But yeah, it definitely, all these things that we have, these things that are maybe our quirks or even we see as our faults, can all have a counter thing to them. And you're always saying that even with a zodiac sign, for every quality that you have within your individual sign, there is always something that may be a bit of a hindrance with that. Everything's that balance.
Yeah.
And everything that might be seen as a flaw has a quality to it.
So I suppose the impulsiveness creates a lot of excitement, but it's not maybe a settled and routine. And that's probably where we struggle a little bit, is with the routine. But other people who have that self-discipline could benefit from just saying, do you know, look at that sunrise, isn't it fantastic? Let's get in the car, drive to the mountain, drive to the lake, drive to the sea. Just do it completely off the cuff. And that's a lovely thing to do. Yeah. Now, in terms of the modality for this week, what cards are you going for?
Well, these are cards that I've never ever used before. I found them down the back of my desk. I don't know how they got there or where I got them from. And they don't even have a name on them. So I will research that and pop it here in case you're interested in what this deck is. But they look nice.
They look really...
Yes, they're quite small, so hopefully be easier for me to shuffle. My tiny little hands. Okay, so the word on this card is Archangel Uriel, and it says clarity. Take 5 minutes away from your desk or work to sit in silence and breathe deeply. We can get this if we work in an office building, if we work somewhere on our feet, if we're working from home. Taking 5 minutes away just to stretch our legs, or just to breathe, or just to, shake off any built-up energy.
This is precisely what you and I don't do.
It's exactly what we don't do, and exactly what we should be doing, because it really gives us a reset. It really can help with inspiration. Movement helps with inspiration as well. And I was listening to this TikTok the other day, and it was this little baby that was suffering from cramps, and the nurse was saying, you need to move them around because they can't move themselves. And lots of people in the comments were saying, I never even thought of that. When we get into that toddler stage, we're on our feet or we're crawling, we can move our bodies. But just like if we're, not very well in bed, or if we're in a hospital, or if we're a tiny newborn baby, we can't do that for ourselves. So we need a little hand of moving around. But that movement is so important for our bodies.
Yeah, my legs feel a bit cramped at the moment. I love going for walks.
Yeah, so we must do that.
Yeah, we must have a walk later today.
We'll take our own advice
today.
We'll
take our own advice. Now, we had 3 entrants for the birthday winner for this week. We had Ida, we had Shona. Ida was born in New Jersey, Shona was born in Australia. I'm sorry guys, you did miss out, because the winner is Shelley from the Celestial Hat. And Shelley B was born in Port Arthur in Texas on the 10th of March 1967. Now, the chart wheel will come up on the screen now, which Alyssa will share. So one of the things that we can see is that Mars, which rules, if you like, the first house, because it's, Aries energy and it's very dynamic, that's just tucked up on the first house cusp, but just falls into the 12th. So I think that this is something that you may have had a little bit of a dilemma on, Shelley, in that I think Mars being so close to that first house does give you a lot of assertiveness, but also the potential for a lot of sensitivity. But it is opposite the North Node, which happens to be on your 7th house cusp. So balancing what you want as an individual, your drive and your assertiveness, with another desire of yours to relate collaboratively with others, has probably been a little bit of a seesaw, I think, pattern in your existence. You can also see that when you were born, it was on a new moon. So it's absolutely exact, all but a few minutes. So your midpoint is in Pisces as well, but both the sun and the moon at 19 degrees. And people who have new moon birthdays tend to be very good at focusing on their own interests, and because you have them in the 5th house, that in itself can be very creative. But there is a little bit of a paradox here, because you also have Saturn in the sign of Aries, actually on the vernal point, in a conjunction with Chiron, also in the 5th house. So as much as the sun and the moon are really giving you tremendous encouragement to be very self-expressive and warm and affectionate, you've got 2 influences there in terms of Chiron, which could make you more inhibited, and with Saturn on Chiron is potentially quite a difficult aspect to have in astrology. So I think that there is the potential, therefore, to have gifts, great gifts, but at times feel that you don't always get the giving that you give to others. It doesn't always feel it comes back to you. So you may feel you have to work very hard in terms of relationships of all kinds. You also have Pluto opposite the Sun and opposite the Moon. So you're talking about one of the most strident of all planetary aspects. People with that can have very strong willpower, but also Pluto opposite the Moon can lead to a sort of polarity in the emotions, in quite big and sweeping mood switches at times, to be honest. But your Pluto and Uranus are in the 11th house of humanity, so very Aquarius, and that could bring more logic and detachment to your future forward planning and the way you link to others. And I think that determination to express your viewpoint, which comes from the ascendant, having Mars on it, and also, having Pluto opposite the Sun and the Moon, is tempered by the potentially more inhibiting energies of Saturn. So quite complex stuff. But I want to tell you, you have a quite glorious water ground trine in your chart. You have Jupiter in the sign of Cancer, where it's exalted, and that's in a beautiful trine with Neptune in the first house, and they're both linking together in the most fantastic of ways with Chiron. So I think that you could be someone who's very gifted at tuning in to other people and understanding what makes them tick. And also the ground water trine is pretty close to that Sun-Moon combination when you were born. So I think that there's part of you that does like to discover and travel and explore with Jupiter in that 9th house, but maybe it's exploring at a more emotional level where you've really shone. You also have Venus in Aries. Technically this is in detriment. It's not said to be its best here because it's the ruler of Libra, so it's in its opposite location. Personally, I like people who have Venus in Aries. I think it gives them a bit of gumption, a bit of get up and go in asserting what they want in relationships. So I think that you're someone with a beautifully sympathetic and perceptive nature, particularly with Uranus and Neptune in an almost perfect sextile. But I think it's just when things get a little bit intense in your life, it may be just a bit difficult to keep the balance in that midpoint between your needs and others' needs, or your viewpoints and others' viewpoints. And so therefore things could be a bit intense at that moment. Now, in terms of your progress chart, what I can tell you is you've just gone through your lunar return. This is your second lunar return, which happens every 27-ish years. And so therefore at the moment your progress moon is in Pisces, but it's just swept past where the Sun and the Moon were when you were born. So it does mean that in the last couple of years, the transit in Neptune has been on your Moon and your Sun, and currently is sat pretty close to your Chiron. So I think this could be a time of great change and great rejuvenation. You could be at the beginning of a new chapter in your situation. But you do have Uranus, which is broadly in an opposition with your Sun and your Moon in your natal horoscope. That is still in the conjunction with Pluto, which can make you quite outspoken, I would think, at times. But you also have Mars right in your 10th house in the sign of Libra. So technically, again, in its detriment, said to be in more challenged in the sign of Libra because it's in the opposite location to its ruler in Aries. But I think in the 10th house, Mars could be giving you a lot of extra assertiveness and self-confidence. But again, in this chart, you still have that ground water trine, but your transiting Sun is at 13 degrees in the sign of Taurus. So essentially, since you were born, and the 55 degrees we count forwards in the ephemeris to take the snapshot of how your secondary progressions were, the Sun is being very strongly influenced by the restless energies of the move in Uranus. And it means also that your progressed Sun has got very much caught up with the Saturn-Uranus square of the last year. So I don't think the last year has been very easy for you, to be honest. But Uranus sat on your progressed Sun in the 5th house is kind of saying liberate yourself from the shackles of anything that inhibits you and really deploy all your creativity and flair and individuality with greater confidence and conviction. So it can be exciting for you. So I hope that gives you a flavour of your situation at the moment, and thank you very much to all three of you for entering. If you would like me to look at your birth chart as the winner for week commencing the 13th, is it the 13th or the 14th? The 14th of March. Your birthday needs to be between the 14th and the 20th of March. Please drop me a line through my website or underneath our YouTube video here. Also, if you'd like us to share in or discuss any concepts or words, please let us know. Thank you for all your lovely contributions and kind messages, which have been gratefully received.
Oh, I just want to mention before we go a massive thank you to our patrons, because we had a technical glitch this week on our site. I called out to the Patreons for help. They came in like knights on shining armour and really helped us out to test some things that we needed to test with them. So a huge thank you for all of you that did that.
So from the 18, it is
Goodbye from him.
And it's goodbye from her.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.